What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over what is the updated best loadout for Fortnite Zero build in Chapter 7 Season 3. As always, if you guys do find this video to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, comment down below what your favorite loadout is at this point in the season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So I had made a video about the best loadout earlier on in the season, but in, typical regular Fortnite fashion, since then, there has been several weapon balance adjustments made to the loot pool, whether it's like new items coming in, items getting vaulted, or just straight up stat changes on the weapons. And this will often change, what ends up being the best stuff in the game. If a new weapon gets added and it's just the best, then, that completely changes things. But also, as we get more comfortable with the season and with the loot pool, some of the preferences players have also tend to change. So let me know what you guys have been using, and I'm going to get right into what I think is the best loadout, and that is going to be starting with the extended focus shotgun. Earlier on in the season, I was not a fan of this shotgun at all, and I definitely preferred the striker pump. But since then, it has been buffed. They increased the damage on it. They increased the pellet consistency, which is absolutely huge. And then they've also made it reload faster, which is another nice benefit because this only has 3 shells. So you are somewhat limited on capacity, but that 3 shells often will be enough to get an elimination, especially if you start a fight with opening damage, which is typically something that you're going to want to be doing in most scenarios. And a huge reason why this shotgun is the best at this point in time is because it has the best range. And with the shock rocks being added to the loot pool, which we'll get to later on in the video, a lot of close range fights has been warped or changed by the addition of the shock rocks. And the added range of the extending focus shotgun is best at taking advantage of the kind of situations the rocks, put you in. And so because the shock rocks were added, I value the range on this shotgun more than I did prior to the shock rocks being added. As far as spray weapon goes, I think the Ranger pistol was the best early on, and there hasn't really been any significant changes to it. I believe they did nerf the accuracy and then maybe the damage at some point, but neither of these were significant enough to really shake up the meta, and so the Ranger pistol is still going to be the best kind of mid to long range spray weapon while also being viable in close range as well. The extending focus shotgun doesn't need just like a raw spray weapon to combo with because it actually does have a pretty good fire rate for a shotgun. I touched on its limited capacity, so maybe there will be some instances where you need to swap to this Ranger pistol after shooting all your shotgun shots. But in general, the Ranger pistol is just everything you would want in a spray weapon. It is suppressed, so, that makes it a little less likely for you to get third-partied, a little harder for people to know where you are. It has really solid damage, really solid fire rate, really solid range, and incredible accuracy. In a season where, everything is a third-person weapon, having really good accuracy like this is a must. You can full spray this weapon at all times without really worrying about the consequences of it, because even at its least accurate, once you've been spraying for a while, the Ranger pistol is still incredibly accurate and you're going to be able to hit a majority of your shots. It has a really good headshot multiplier, which will melt enemies down. And just in general, the time to kill of this weapon is incredible. If you have an incredible time to kill, along with incredible accuracy and incredible ease of use, it's everything you would want in a spray weapon. The only real lacking kind of side here is going to be its mag capacity. It also has a somewhat low mag considering it's a pistol, but most of the time this isn't going to be that much of a problem because it does reload fast, and as I said, the time to kill is really good, so you can easily eliminate enemies in a single mag. And then if you do need more, you can reload pretty quick, and there often will be times throughout the course of a fight where you are able to get reloads off. So the Ranger pistol is very good and very versatile, and that's really nice because typically in Zero build you only want to be carrying 2 weapons, or you only want to be carrying 2 core weapons, 2 of your main fighting weapons. And so the extending focus shotgun and the Ranger pistol kind of check all of the boxes that you would need. And then the next item slot is going to be mobility, and this is where the shock rocks come in. These were added, since the last loadout video I've made, and this is one of the best mobility items of all time probably. I touched on how with the pistol, it kind of checks all the boxes of what you would need as a spray weapon. The shock rocks do that, but with mobility. If you need to get away from a fight, it does that incredibly well. If you need to chase an enemy that's trying to flee, it does that incredibly well. If you just want to travel around the map and get from point A to point B quicker, it does that incredibly well. If you want to rotate in the late game, it does that incredibly well. If you just want movement in a fight to kind of dodge, it does that very well. And so it's everything you could want. When you use a shock rock, you get 3 charges on your character, and if you use all 3 in quick succession, you go really high and you go really far, and this makes it good at all of those things I kind of just touched on. And then using 1 or 2 of the regular jumps in a fight can completely throw off an enemy's aim, break their camera, make it harder for them to track you, make it harder for them to deal with you. And a lot of times you will be creating a good amount of range in between you and the enemy when you use these shock rocks in a fight. And that is where the range of the extending focus shotgun comes in incredibly well. It capitalizes on that very well. And the other shotguns don't as much. So if you're using the focus playing against a Maven user and you have shock rocks, you can just make them completely useless in the fight. And the same is mostly true of the striker pump as well. It has okay range, but if you're, jumping around and being very elusive, you're going to throw that pump user off a lot. I touched on 2 of the main problems of the extending focus shotgun and the pistol are both mag capacity. And the shock rocks also help for that too, because like, let's say you try to go fight somebody and you miss 2 shots with your extending focus shotgun and then you hit 1, but this is a fight that you're probably going to lose if you just swap to the ranger pistol. You can use a shock rock charge, dip to some piece of cover, quickly reload, and then get back in that fight. The mag capacity problem of these weapons, I feel like, is solved if you use your shock rocks well. So it's an incredibly good movement item. Like I said, you get 3 charges on your character when you use a single rock, and then you can carry 6 rocks in a single inventory slot. Finding these just from looting and getting a full stack that way can be a bit of a struggle, but if you do go to the 0 point area, there are a bunch of shock rocks on the ground that you can pick up, and since this is the middle of the map and natural mobility, that's something that you can kind of easily and conveniently do throughout the course of the game. You loot your initial POI, then go to the 0 point, stack up on some rocks, hit the 0 point to rotate, and then, go where you want to go or wherever you see fighting. Another real benefit of this is the audio this season is not great. And these shock rocks, like I said, if you use all 3 charges, you get really high. And this often means you can land on people with pretty much no audio, which will give you a really solid and surprise engage in a lot of fights, especially if you're third partying. And obviously enemies can do this as well. So, having 3 charges on your character to potentially outplay or counter that situation is also really important. Like I said, it's just an incredible mobility item. And the main counter to it is just to have it yourself. So you're definitely going to want to have these crystals and get used to using them. Also, you don't need to swap weapons to use it. You just jump and then jump again while in air to do one of the charges. And so it's a little more seamless than a lot of mobility items are. Also, if you're playing team game modes and you use 1 rock, everybody around you gets it. So if you group up with your team, use a rock, you get mobility for everyone off a single use. That's just another benefit of this item. For heals, at one point in time, the best was Ice Cream, but that has been vaulted. And so at this point, the Chug Jug is the best healing item in the game, I think, for 0 build, especially. For builds, I kind of prefer Big Pots just because they're a little bit faster. But for 0 build, I really like the Chug, and you can find this at vending machines for 750 gold. And so I typically make a habit of just always getting a Chug Jug when I'm at the vending machines if I'm not full on mine. Or, once I'm looting my initial POI, I definitely want to leave with a Chug Jug because 750 gold is not really that much. And you get a really solid, really versatile healing item. And like I said, the removal of the Ice Cream makes room for this to be the best. And then the final slot is really going to be up to you. I said earlier how in 0 build, typically people want to carry just 2 core fighting weapons. The hunting rifle is an item that a lot of people using and you could put it in this slot just fine. It's not like the core fighting loot, but it's like a situationally really good item. You snipe at people. If you play this season, you know how incredibly good the hunting rifle is. Being able to one-shot opponents or just get really good body damage on somebody somewhat consistently makes the hunting rifle one of the best weapons. So if you do want to use the hunting rifle, I think it is, like I said, really overpowered, really good. One of the S tier items in the loot pool right now, and it pairs perfectly with the Ranger pistol and extending focus shotgun playstyle. So there's that can easily slot in. I personally still like using double mobility with overdrive grenades, and it might seem weird to do that because everything I just said about the shock rocks and how it's one of the best mobility items ever. Why would I also want overdrive nades on top of that? Mainly just for the less important movement, because the surprise factor of the shock rocks and having that potentially just engage on me at any time makes me want to always have 3 charges ready to go on my shock rocks. And so there's a lot of fights where I want to push somebody, and an overdrive grenade does perfectly well. And then I can use that overdrive, push the enemy, reposition in the fight, whatever, and then still save my charges. And so it basically just comes down to that. I like using the overdrives to save shock rock charges throughout the course of the game more. Also, if you go to push somebody and you only have rocks as movement, you'll often use your rock charges to push somebody, which might result in you not having any charges for the fight, which can also be a problem. There's a pocket item Shockwave, and that can kind of solve that problem as well. But I just like having overdrives on top of it. You could also do an additional stack of, you know, chalk rocks if you want to be really crazy and have 12 of them in your inventory. That's something I will often do if I'm not able to find overdrives. But like I said, I like having the two different forms of mobility. That way I can conserve the rocks for the important, like, get out of bad situation moments, or make sure I have the shock rocks ready to go in a fight, even if I am going to be pushing somebody. So it really comes down to you what you want in this final slot, but it's probably going to be either hunting rifle or more mobility with how this season plays out. But that is going to be it for this video, or maybe like bunkers if you're playing team game modes, but I feel like in solos they're not really that important. The Guardian Shield is also a very niche item that can be very good, but that's kind of what this final slot would be. So my, you know, preferred setup at the moment is going to be extending focus shotgun, ranger pistol, shock rocks, chug jug, and overdrive grenades, and basically does everything you need to do while having a lot of mobility and a lot of options to play a fight or get out of a fight or chase an enemy. You just have so many options throughout the course of the game with how you want to play with the setup, and you also have two very good, very versatile weapons. But that is going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought and what your favorite setup is down in the comments below. If you did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.